All right. So the half of it was directed by director Alice Wu. It stars newcomer Leia Lewis as Ellie Chu, a Chinese immigrant who lives in rural Washington. She lives with her dad and helps him run the train station. As a side hustle, she writes essays for other students, and she's really good at it. One day, a kid named Paul comes along and asks her to write a paper, or not a paper actually, a love letter for his crush, Aster. Initially, Ellie is really opposed to the idea because it's love. But for some reason, she decides to take him up on the offer because she happens to have a crush on Aster too, and it's a chance to interact with her. So, as you can imagine, things get a little complicated. Alright, so let's talk about the good of the half of it. One thing that I thought was pretty cool about this movie was that it featured a female LGBT character. We don't get to see that a whole lot in rom-coms, so it was cool to explore that side of young teenage love. It's also cool that Ellie happens to be an immigrant too, so it adds another layer of complexity and interestingness, I guess you could say, to her character. The movie starts out a little slow and sappy, but it quickly delves into the characters' personalities and the concept of love, and what it means to be in love, and what it means to love other people, and this sort of thing. And so I think that's really interesting, and it's a little more complex than your typical coming of age rom-com. And it was obviously the messy entanglement between Ellie and Paul's individual feelings for Aster makes things complicated and interesting too. Leia Lewis does a great job with her character of Ellie. She's believable, you feel for her, and her emotions never feel forced. Let's be honest, a lot of these young actors in Netflix shows can be they can feel a little amateurish. Their acting can feel a little forced, especially if they're doing emotions and stuff like that. So, or really emotional things. So I feel like Leia Lewis handled that well, and we'll probably see her more on Netflix and elsewhere. I also liked the way the movie looked. Like, I wasn't expecting it to look bad, but usually, just rom-coms don't have the prettiest cinematography. But, this movie looks like Alice Wu and her cinematographer, Greta Zozula, put a really good amount of thought and effort into lining up the scenes. I also really liked how there were pops of color throughout the movie that contrasted against the very drab gray background of Squamish, Washington. I know this sounds cheesy, but these little pops of color felt like little pops of hope and love amongst all the kind of just drab defeatedness of living in the rural town that nobody seemed to really want to be in. So yeah, there's a lot of things to get happy about in this movie. Alright, let's talk about the bad. Honestly, I don't have a whole lot of bad things to say about this movie. If I had one main complaint, it would be how messy and drawn out the story gets in certain places. The movie's not very long. It's less than 2 hours, but it just feels stretched in a few spots, particularly towards the end. I feel like the conclusion was just really drawn out, and some bits of it didn't make sense. Like, the characters did things that were just strange. There's a particular scene involving the town church at the end. I'm not gonna spoil it, but that one was just a mess, in my opinion, and probably could have been reworked a little bit, but it's not a big enough deal to take down the whole movie. Overall, I like the half of it. It's a decent movie. It didn't redefine rom-coms. It didn't redefine coming-of-age movies, but that's okay. I wasn't expecting it to, and it does bring something interesting to the table. So I would definitely recommend checking it out. I give it a 3.5 out of 5. But don't let me tell you what to think of it. Go watch it, form your own opinion, and then come back and tell me what you think. Do it, please. I want to know. Okay, cool. All right. Anyway, so this has been the Popcorn Cult with me, Sean, as your host, and we've been talking about the half of it. I will see you next time. Later.